And what usually happens when you say no? Well, there are three things that could happen. Hello, my name is Elenit and I'm an inner truth teacher and coach. Have you ever said yes when you actually wanted to say no? Maybe someone asked you for a favor or invited you somewhere you didn't want to go. Maybe someone asked for your time, energy, or attention, and even though something inside you wanted to decline, you said yes anyway. A lot of people struggle to say no, and there are different reasons for it. If this happens to you, you probably don't want to hurt the other person's feelings, or you don't want to be seen as mean or selfish. Also, there's the fear of losing benefits such as approval, opportunities, or material things. The reality is that many of us were taught that yes is a good word and no is a bad word. That saying yes makes you kind and that saying no makes you selfish. But that belief creates a lot of problems because yes and no are, in fact, communication tools. Imagine trying to hammer a nail into a wall using a knife. It'd be catastrophic. A knife isn't a bad tool, but it's the wrong tool for that particular job. What you need is the hammer. So the same is true with yes and no. Sometimes yes is the right tool, and sometimes no is the right tool. If you use the wrong one, you can end up hurting yourself and others. Another reason saying no is crucial is that it expresses authenticity. When you say no, you're showing people who you really are. You are communicating your preferences, your values, priorities, and limits. And in many ways, it's also an act of love. Love towards yourself because you're honoring what's true for you. And love towards others because you're allowing them to have a relationship with the real you, not with an insecure or accommodating version of you. If you're still struggling to say no, there's also a question that is worth asking. How am I seeing the other person? Because sometimes we act as if the other person is too fragile to handle disappointment. We imagine they'll be devastated if we decline their requests. But in fact, when we refuse to say no because we're trying to protect someone from disappointment, we are actually seeing them as less capable than they really are. And that is not a noble attitude. Now, let's speak about how saying no is a great test for your relationships. One of the best ways to test a relationship is through authenticity. Be honest about your opinions. Say no when you mean no, and then watch what happens. And what usually happens when you say no? Well, there are three things that could happen. The first possibility is that the person simply accepts your answer and respects it. Keep that person in your life because they're good. The second is that they try to convince you and push you to say yes, but eventually let go if you remain firm. And the third possibility is that they become upset or offended. If you get this reaction, it doesn't mean you've done something wrong. On the contrary, it reveals that the other person doesn't have your best interest in mind, and that gives you valuable information to evaluate their relationship. Now, I'll give you two personal examples from this week where I said no and the reactions that I received. The first situation was when a man approached me in a shop. He seemed friendly and looked presentable, and I love talking to people, so we talked a little bit, about 10 minutes, and until I thought it was enough, and I said to him that I had to continue with my shopping. Then he suggested meeting sometimes for coffee. I know he was interested in me romantically, but I was not interested in pursuing that. So I said, thanks, but I don't usually do that. Which is true. Then he tried to convince me by saying, well, you can make an exception this time. I knew I was not attracted to him. And honestly, even though I've been practicing this for years, and I even teach it in my workshops and coaching, his insistence felt like pressure. And precisely because of that feeling, I recognized that he was stepping over a boundary that I had already set. So finally, I said firmly, no, I won't do that. And that was the end of it. He wished me a good day and left. The second situation was when a client asked me if we could skip a week. At first, I almost said yes because I actually like her. And I could even hear in my mind thoughts like, come on, what's a week? Just be nice. But very quickly, I reminded myself that skipping a week would be neither good for my business nor for her progress. So I said no. She seemed a little disappointed, but she accepted it. I gave you those two examples because it felt great to stand my ground. Every time you choose yourself, your confidence will grow. And these situations happen very often. Like I'm telling you, this week it happened 2 times already. As a rule of thumb, whenever someone asks you for something, ask yourself this: is what they're asking me beneficial to me, or does it make my life harder? If it's a favor you genuinely want to do and it doesn't create a burden, wonderful, do it. But if saying yes brings you stress, inconvenience, or a feeling of betraying yourself, then no is the right answer. I speak about this topic very often in my workshops and sessions, and people always agree that they need to say no more often. But a common question is, how do I actually say no? The key is to keep it simple. Here are a few phrases that you can use. No, I can't do that. I use this one very often, by the way. No, I don't want to do that. No, that doesn't work for me. And no, I'm not up for it. One of the biggest mistakes people make is over-explaining when saying no. Because when you give a long explanation, a few things can happen. First, you communicate that you feel guilty. And there's no reason to feel guilty. Second, you imply that your no needs justification when it doesn't. And third, you give the other person material to argue with and to try to convince you to say yes. Remember, the more you practice saying no in a direct way, the more confidence, self-respect, and clarity you develop. Finally, here's a question for you. In what situations currently do you need to start saying no more often? See you next time.